Hello, welcome to a webcast on installing Apache web services as well as FTP services. I'm your host, Gabriel Smith, and in this webcast we're going to show you how to install Apache and FTP on a Linux box. Now the scope is, as you imagine, will be to show anyone how to install FTP and HTTP on a Linux box. The audience for this tutorial is anyone who wants to install Apache web services. This tutorial or this webcast is not intended to show you how to design web pages, but more so it's focusing on getting the basic web services started on your machine. The outline for this webcast is that we're going to take a quick peek at the Linux flavors. We're going to look at introduce the Microsoft FTP changes and why I chose to use FileZilla instead of the Microsoft FTP client. We're going to look at installing and configuring the FTP server. We're going to look at turning off the security Linux feature, and we're going to take a quick look at the run levels of a Linux box. We're going to look at how we would start the FTP services once they're installed. We're going to take a look at installing the Apache web service, and we're going to mention the Apache configuration file. There are many flavors of Linux. Sometimes when we speak of Linux, we just kind of think that it's one operating system, but this isn't true. Linux is a core operating system, or core. It's the core code from which many operating systems are built. This webcast will be focused on the Red Hat tree of the operating systems. So the commands in this tutorial should work on Red Hat, Fedora, and CentOS. Now, I have been using FTP for well over 10 years. And I noticed this time around when I used the FTP client for Microsoft Windows, I noticed that there were some fundamental changes in the client. For the most part, I am used to the FTP client only using port 21, but apparently the FTP client actually uses other ports when you run additional commands. Now, for whatever reason, Microsoft firewalls have decided to basically block a lot of ports that the FTP client actually uses. I think port 20 is another port. I actually went through the process of trying to configure my Microsoft Windows 8 firewall to allow these ports to remain open for FTP, but to no avail. So as a result, I've decided to just kind of skip all that and just use FileZilla. And you can download the FileZilla FTP client at filezilla.project.org, and it's kind of like a client that gives you a folder view on the box that you're connected via FTP. To install FTP, it's very simple. All you have to do is make sure that you're the super user. To do this, you type SU. I have in here uppercase SU, but it's lowercase SU, and then the dash. And this is going to change you to the super user and give you the profile of the super user. The next step is to actually install the client. It's very simple. You type yum install -y vsftpd, which is the name of the FTP client. vsftpd is the name of the client. Once the client has successfully installed, you want to modify the configuration file located in /etc/vsftpd, and again that file is vsftpd.conf. Once you edit that file, I use VI editor, but you may want, if you're new to Linux, you want to use something like GNOME edit, something that's going to be much more simpler to use. But basically you want to uncomment these lines of code in that configuration file. You can pause the video here if you need to go through them, but I'm just going to move on. Once you've uncommented the lines of code, you can also add the user ID that you intend to use for FTP purposes. You can basically edit the chroot_list, which is located in the etc vsftpd directory. And again, all you're going to do is add a user ID to that file. Security Linux is basically a feature of Linux that adds additional security to Linux. I've had problems when setting up FTP and also some other services, so I've decided to turn this off. To temporarily turn it off, you could type sudo setenforce0. To permanently turn this off, you can edit the etc selinux config file. And the setting that you want to change is that you want to modify the setting that's listed as selinux equal enforcing, and you can change that to selinux equals disable, which is going to permanently disable security Linux, or you can just put it in allow mode, meaning it's going to allow all the requests coming in with the command with the line selinux equal permissive. A quick view on run levels. Basically, a run level is a state that your machine is in. So 0 is a shutdown state, 1 is single user mode, 2 is multi-user mode without networking, 3 is multi-user mode with networking, and 4 is user defined. You can make up your own run level by modifying 4. 5 is basically the same level as 3, plus you have a display manager. And 6, it basically reboots the system. Typically, your machine should be running in 3. So run level 5 if you're using the graphical interface. If you're not using any GUIs, then you would probably be in run level 3. So with that said, you want to start your FTP services, or you want to see what run levels the FTP services is currently. Okay, so actually what you want to do is that you want to set up your FTP services so that when your machine boots into any given run level, it would basically be on. So you do that by using the check config command, vsftpd, which is the name of the service or the daemon that we install, double hyphen, and then level, and then you type the run levels 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you type on. This is sort of a typo. 6 is actually not a run level; it's more of a reboot state. But for run levels 2, 3, 4, and 5, I've elected to have it on. To check whether or not your changes, or to confirm your changes, you can use check config pipe grep, and then the name of the actual daemon, and you can see that's done here, and basically it shows you where it's on and off. At this point, we're ready. Although we changed the run levels of the FTP service, we haven't actually started it. To start it, you want to type service vfftpd start, and then this is actually going to start the service. If you want to check the status of the FTP service, you run the command service vsftpd status, and it'll tell you whether or not it's running. Now, I've noticed that I've had some problems with the firewall, the Linux firewalls. I've elected to turn it off. This is very dangerous. You would probably want to add firewall rules for your FTP service on your Linux box, but that's outside of the scope of this webcast. To turn your firewall off, you use check config IP tables. IP tables is the name of the firewall service. Double hyphen level, and then you mark it off for the different run levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. 6 again is just reboot. This is actually a typo. Now the IP, you would do the same thing for IP6. Basically, you have 2 services running, one for just normal TCP/IP and the other for IP6. Now that's going to set the state of the firewall services on the Linux box. And again, you don't really want to turn that off. I'm just showing you a simple way of getting started when installing FTP and pretty much HTTP and removing the firewall issue so that you don't stumble over that. But the commands before are going to show you how to change the state of the firewall when the machine is rebooted. to basically turn the firewall service off here and now, you would type service IP tables stop, and the same for IP6. Okay, so long story short, Apache is actually already installed in CentOS or CentOS, tomato, depending on how you pronounce it. But if you find that your flavor of Red Hat doesn't have it installed, you can type yum install -y httpd, which is going to install it. And to start the service, you type service httpd start. And again, with the run levels, which we've already gone through, if you want to make sure that the service comes up whenever the machine is booted, check config double hyphen levels 2, 3, and 5, and you mark it on. Okay, believe it or not, installing Apache is just that simple. If you want to modify your configurations for the web servers, you can go to etc httpd conf, and you can edit the httpd.conf file. So again, the configuration file for your Apache web service is located in etc/httpd/conf, and the name of the file is httpd.conf. Now, this, as I stated earlier, this webcast isn't designed to show you how to build web pages. However, you can add your web pages, such as your index files, so on and so forth, to var/ww/html. Okay, this is the conclusion to this webcast. Please visit unixsystemresources.com, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, definitely send me an email at busy386@gmail.com. Thank you for your time.